Could begin our meeting here. And Sue, are you ready to begin? Okay. Looks like everybody's set. So why don't we begin with the roll call?
Councilmember Harlan. Here. Councilmember Norton. Councilmember Bottorff. Here. Councilmember Termini.
Here.
Mayor Story.
Here. And now let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Councilmember Termini.
You got it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we'll move to the report on closed session. So I'll ask the city attorney to give us a report.
Good evening, Council. The city attorney discussed the item on the agenda, and no reportable action was taken.
Thank you for that very succinct and thorough report. We had some additional materials that were given to us, and actually a folder that just came up from the audience. So we'll move on to item number 4, which is additions and deletions to the agenda. Jamie, any changes to tonight's agenda?
Staff has no changes.
Thank you. Council members, any requested changes? Seeing none, we'll proceed with the agenda as it stands. Next is public comments. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the City Council on items that are not on tonight's agenda. So if you would like to speak, please step up. Come on up, sir. And if you want your name in the record, you can state your name, but you don't need to.
No, I will. My name is Manuel Vieira. I'm the owner of the Cabrilla Mobile Home Estates. My neighbor is 200 Kennedy and 100 Kennedy. The beautiful winery, brewery. Right now there's about 30 cars out in the parking lot over there with people drinking outside, disturbing the residents. We're not sure exactly how to proceed on this because CCR is supposed to be maintained when it was promised to us. We got a lab over there that's supposed to be testing asbestos and other materials. Now they're testing cannabis. Where's our? How do I tell my tenants and myself to you guys who patrols it? Is it Mr. McCoy that has the CCRs that are in control, or is it the city? I was up here complaining not to build it, not to let it happen, and it was on a notion of what I believe was going to happen. Reality has kicked in. I got a freeway going through my park. Residents are upset. I mean, I don't know which way to go, and only so much funds to deal with. And I was hoping to get some type of direction from you guys how to proceed on this matter. In addition, I was just brought to my attention there was something else that's trying to move in. I'm really against that. That's all I need. I mean, how much more bad luck do I need to get?
Okay. That agenda item's on tonight's agenda, so if you want to stay and speak to that,
okay,
you're welcome to do that. But if there are particular concerns about the business operations,
yeah, definitely, because everything's supposed to be maintained inside the property. The parking lot is for parking. It's not for crates. It's not for smashing grapes. It's not for brewery tanks outside. It's not for people to drink beer and congregate out there for 2 or 3 hours with a bunch of cars. I mean, that's not the intent of this project. That's what it is today. Okay. That is reality.
Well, you can convey your concerns to the city manager, and then I'm sure they'll follow up with it.
Okay. Thank you very much. My residents, too, do I advise them to do that, too?
Well,
the residents,
anyone who has a concern about things that are going on in Capitola should convey them to the City Hall.
Well, I did come down here concerned, and he says all the CCNRs will be taken care of. And the gentleman I spoke to is not in this room, unfortunately. So I just wanted to came down here and never got a direct answer.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Why don't you follow up?
Thank you.
Right. You're welcome. Anyone else that would like to address the council on items that are not on tonight's agenda? Yeah, come on up, sir.
Sure. Hi, my name is Matthew David. I'm a resident at 850 Park Avenue, Unit 16C. We purchased our property recently. We moved in May of this year and love it down here, love the community, split our time between here and San Francisco. My problem lately has been that when we moved in, we bought a house with a beautiful ocean view, unobstructed, looking across Park Avenue. There is now a speed limit sign that is directly in my view. So I had a question for you all, the council, was, is this a new sign or is this a replacement sign? So I guess there's 2 new signs on Park Avenue that are solar powered that read what your speed is. So I'm curious as to if they're new sign or a replacement sign to something existing.
This is not really time to ask questions of the council.
So I'm curious what that answer is, because
well, the answer, those are newly installed signs.
Those are newly installed signs.
And so again, if you want to go to the City Hall at the desk, and you can present your questions, and I'm sure the staff there will be happy to.
There's a difference between a newly installed sign and a replacement sign, so that develops a further question on my part, because we are in a coastal commission zone.
Yeah, understood.
And I want to make sure that the proper procedures were done in order to install those signs.
Of course.
Because there's also another issue I have is the chief of police. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it. I got married the day after the last city council meeting that this was voted on.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It was a long time coming. It's much appreciated. Thank you. The sign that was presented by the chief of police and the signs that were installed were 2 different signs completely. The sign that was installed is also 15 feet high versus all of the speed limit signs that are on that street are 9.5 feet high. That's a significant difference. It's above the fence level, and it really it's a visual impairment to many of the units of these condominium units, not apartment units, that are along Balboa that have a Park Avenue address. So those are my issues.
Okay, thank you for coming up and speaking to us this evening. Anyone else?
Good evening. I'm Jessica Hansen, and I am also speaking tonight with regard to the new traffic sign that's on Park Avenue. I was not at the previous meeting where this was discussed, and I'm just following up on Matthew's comments and some other people in the area, and I've just written a short letter to you guys just for your consideration. Bear with me in the effort of saving paper. My family has had homes in the area for over 50 years, the last 38 of which have been both at 870 and 850 Park Avenue complexes. I have known and cherished this stretch of coast through every season for decades. Those of us who live along Park Avenue all know and cherish this stretch of coast. And we daily witness those who are not blessed to live overlooking the ocean, drive, ride, or walk along the street to take in the sunrise on their morning commutes, the midday sun at their midday breaks, or the sunsets at the end of their work days. Traffic noise interrupts the peace for us here. Irrespective of speed, trucks and motorcycle engines are disrupted, to say the least. But the beautiful thing about Park Avenue and where we live in Capitola is that this is a public way, open to anyone to enjoy, one of the most beautiful stretches of coast anywhere. As a community, we are vigilant in our efforts to reduce and eliminate pollution. We think of pollution in terms of what despoils our natural environment. I'm afraid that the newly erected speeding signs despoil the natural landscape that so many cherish and work to protect. This isn't just a neighborhood concern. Those of us who live here, I believe, have come forward not only as individuals whose daily landscape has been tagged not by graffiti, but something no less egregious. We come as stewards of community resource, asking you to remove this unnatural and distracting construct to restore the sanctity of our natural environment. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Cynthia Quist, and I also live at 850 Park Avenue. We are a group of neighbors who have come together to discuss the location of the traffic metering sign on the westbound side of Park Avenue. We see this as a problem that appeared with no warning, but is fixable. These signs have significantly impacted our view of the bay that we all love. Those of us that are fortunate enough to live right on the bay now have a bit of an eyesore, and we are convinced that this can be remedied. Each one of you have a folder. If you wouldn't mind opening the folder quickly, we'll flip through this very fast. The first two pictures that you see are before and after. A before picture from our terrace and an after picture. The second, the same thing at sunset, before and after. The third is from a neighbor of ours who couldn't be here tonight, wished they could, and they sent this photo along. At this point, I would like to ask my husband to come up and read a letter from another neighbor of ours who lives on Balboa, but had a lovely view through 820 and 850 out to the ocean.
Good evening. My name is Jim Quist. I'm a resident of Capitola. I live at 850 Park Avenue, 14B. I received this email from Ken Radiff, who is also a resident of Capitola. He and his wife, Carrie, live at 824 Balboa Avenue. His email reads, Dear Capitola City Council, yesterday I received a letter from our neighbors, Cynthia and Jim Quist, stating their disappointment with the placement of the traffic metering signs along Park Avenue and how it disrupts their ocean view. My family and I were as well affected by the placement of the signs, as one of them was placed between 850 Park and 825 Balboa Avenues, directly in front of our small peak of the ocean. Since our view is just a glimpse, the sign obscures a greater portion of the little view that we have had. I know that your council discussed the installation of the signs, but we are very disappointed with the lack of consultation with residents with their exact placement. I'm writing this letter in hopes it will be read with consideration on this matter, since I cannot attend the City Council meeting scheduled for Thursday, January 9th, due to my work schedule. By the way, Ken is a firefighter here in Santa Cruz. I'm hoping an alternate spot can be agreed upon where it won't affect any Capitola residents' view of where we are blessed to live. Thank you for your time, Ken and Carrie Radiff. This is a real issue for us as residents. It's important to us. This is, as Cindy's indicated, it's a real eyesore. And if you haven't seen the sign, I invite you to stop by. And for those of us that enjoy the views from the terrace of the home that we work so hard to acquire, it's a real problem for us. And we hope that you'll be able to help us resolve the issue. Thanks.
Hello, I'm June Smith, and I also live at 850 Park Avenue. I am not impacted myself because of where my condo is located, but I'm here in support of the others, and I've also been asked to read a small statement from Julie Taylor, President of the Board of the Park Place Apartments at 825 Balboa, which is just next to our condo. And she says, as Board President of Park Place Apartments, I've heard several complaints about the placement of the speed signs and their obstruction of ocean views from both front and side units. I would recommend the repositioning of the signs per Cynthia Quist's suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the council?
Did you get a chance to go through the other photos at the end? Those are our suggestions for relocation. The block between Cabrillo and Wesley, which is actually 1/2 of a block down. There is a fence with a family lives there, and there's a high fence and a tarp tent behind the fence. There is no view from that home. It would be the easiest, I think, the easiest way to relocate. I have added a photo of the tree canopy break because I know that that's important for the solar cell, that you have to be able to have sun. Although turning the solar cell might be something we could discuss at a later date. Anyway, so that's one option, and the other one is in there for you to peruse. Then there's minutes from the meeting and some things highlighted you might want to take a closer look at when you have time. And I'm sure we can figure out a way to fix this problem. I'm sure we can. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you all for coming down and conveying to us the impacts of the sign on you. And certainly I think that we'd like to ask the city manager and the chief of police to look at the materials and look at the locations and come back to the council with any recommendations they may have about its possible relocation. So
Can I
once
say
again,
something,
thank you.
Sam?
Certainly, Dennis.
If I'm not mistaken, that these speed limit signs were put up there at the request of the people in that area to slow traffic down. And the intent is public safety there. Whether in the right place or the wrong place, that's up for discussion right now. And when you say it's in your view, are you referring to that it's in the ocean view or just you see them? Because the pictures only reflect that you see them. It doesn't reflect that they're in the ocean view. So,
Sir, it's in my ocean. It's completely in the center of the
okay,
ocean.
okay.
Absolutely.
I'll have to come by and see. I'll have to come by your house and see it then. I'll have
I
to
have
come by.
another picture I can show
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Yeah.
I'd invite you over to our home.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Because the pictures aren't reflecting that. That's all.
There's a thing I'd like to say back, say in
What?
response to that, is that this...
You need to come to the microphone.
Yeah, come so you can be on camera, and I'll just give you a minute to wrap up.
As I say, I wasn't able to be here during that time. What I did do is I took the opportunity to watch the whole entire council meeting during the period of time that it was discussed. I found very interesting several things. Is the report that was presented to you on the safety issue was where the sign is located, there was no issue. It was a solution looking for a problem that didn't exist. Between the two streets, between Corbello and Coronado, there were no traffic accidents in that area. It was further down. The issues are further down on Park Avenue, not in that section. That's neither here nor there, but it is a point of contention that I would like to, in response to that, because if you look through the report, the safety did say that it was a safe speed, 35 miles an hour is a safe speed. The state dictates an 85 percentile, all that was in the report. Everything stated that there was not an issue between those street signs. Now that's neither here nor there. We're coming to you to try to find a solution that's amenable to everyone, to less impact us, who bought a house very recently and paid quite a bit of money, my first home, that now I have this god-awful sign that's 15 feet high, that's 5.5 feet higher than any other sign on the street. I'm impacted.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's assess the locations of the signs. I think we can all agree. We know why they were put in. I think it's for everyone's benefit, but I think the particular issue is just the location. Maybe is it feasible to find a location that is maybe a less impact on the neighbors there. We certainly understand. We appreciate you coming down and sharing your concerns. This is what local government is about. And we were going to ask the staff, and I'm sure they'll follow up. And then they'll come back, and maybe we could agendize an item to look at the feasibility of relocating, and of course the economic cost of doing that as well. Okay, thank you. Anyone else would like to address the council on items that are not on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we're going to move on then to item number 6, which is the City Council, City Treasurer, and staff comments. Why don't we begin with staff comments?
Staff has no comments this evening.
Right. Thank you. City Treasurer, comments?
No comments.
Okay. City Council members? Who has nothing? Nothing on this end? Okay. Next, we go to item number 7, which is boards, commissions, and committees appointments. And we have the mayor and vice mayor appointments to the City Finance Advisory Commission. We'll maybe first start and consider the vice mayors, either going on to the Finance Advisory Committee or an appointment to the Finance Advisory Committee. Which is your preference?
Well, I would like to ask my colleague Mike Termini if he'd like to sit in the Finance Committee for me.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
We have an offer and acceptance on that, and as the mayor, I'm going to continue on the Finance Advisory Committee in that role, so we'll just appoint myself. Regarding appointments, I'm not sure if we need a vote on that, but maybe just is there a motion to accept those appointments?
By someone who wasn't appointed, maybe?
I'll move to accept.
There's a motion.
I'll second that.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously. The next will bring us to the consent calendar. These are a list of items that are handled with one motion unless someone would like to remove an item for further discussion. First, I'll ask, is there anyone from the audience that would like to remove a consent calendar item?
Maybe. I'd like to move 8F. F is in Frank? Frank.
Okay.
I was wanting to request that as well. I didn't mind until it was at the end, but since we have someone from the audience, maybe we want to take it before the end.
Okay,
Thank you.
Is that okay with council members?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay, so we will put item F at the beginning of the general government public hearing section.
I'd like to pull item H, and we can do that at the end if you want to.
Okay, item H will go to the end of the agenda.
I'd like to pull item C, please. That can go to the end, too.
Okay, and item C will come after item H.
Could we have item C happen during general also, only because I see our fire chief here, and he's stayed to the end of the last two meetings we discussed this. I'm going to try and give him a break.
Okay.
Okay, if that's okay with everyone, why don't we put item C then after item F?
With that, I'll move the remainder of the consent calendar unless there's
Second.
others that want to pull items.
Yeah, I'd like to pull item I.
Item I, we
I
will...
also had a couple questions on I.
Okay.
Just a clarification. We could do that one early also.
Let's go, we'll put item I after item C. Okay, we don't have much less of the consent
Is
agenda
there
any
any
longer.
chance that we can bring it back to another day, since there are numerous other shopkeepers that aren't present tonight that are out of town?
Well, I think we'll deal with that when we get to the item.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right.
I'll move the balance of the consent agenda.
Okay,
Second.
There's a motion and,
Already
Stephanie had
had
already
one.
made a
Sorry.
motion,
Okay.
so Mike, you'll take
I'll
the
second,
second?
yeah.
Okay. There's a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously. Which will bring us now to item 8F, which is to consider a contract with Gene Bregman and Associates in an amount not to exceed $10,000 for a public opinion poll. Staff report?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, before you tonight is a proposed contract with Gene Bregman and Associates to conduct a public opinion poll. This would be a public opinion poll intended to gauge the community's interest in new library development, as well as assessing the city's job performance and providing services, as well as asking some questions related to stormwater education, stormwater awareness within the city of Capitola. As the council is aware, the city periodically has conducted public opinion polling to gauge citizen opinion about how we're doing our job and to help adjust our course of action. The city is obligated to conduct public opinion polling regarding stormwater issues pursuant to our regional stormwater permit. In addition, the city is obligated to build a library in the next several years under an agreement with the county, and prior to the investment of the resources in constructing the library, staff is recommending asking the citizens a little bit about how they use the library to help guide that decision-making process. I'm available for questions.
Other questions from council members on this topic?
Well, Mr. Mayor, the reason I was concerned with this one is I think it's, first, premature. We're a ways away from going forward, and also there's a better use for $10,000 than yet another opinion poll to let us know how great we're doing.
And the question I had, Jamie, was when would the actual survey questions be developed, coming out? It seems that, we're being asked to approve a contract, approve a concept of, without actually seeing the particular questions that are going to be surveyed.
Traditionally, those questions have been developed by staff in consultation with the polling firm. An alternative mechanism to do that would be to potentially appoint a subcommittee of council members to meet with staff to help develop the questions. Alternatively, those questions could be developed and then taken to the city council as a whole. My recommendation is probably either to leave it as a staff level item. Alternatively, forming the subcommittee, I think, would be the second strategy I'd suggest, simply to avoid the appearance of it becoming sort of more of a political type issue and rather focusing on simply the pragmatic needs of this particular poll that we're engaged in.
Okay, thank you, Jamie. Are there other questions from council members? Are there any members of the public that would like to address the council on this item?
Good evening. I'm Glenn Hanna. I live at 650 37th Avenue in Santa Cruz. I want to speak to you about the library part of the questionnaire. I would agree with Mike. It's absolutely premature. It's at best 3 years away. But I want to speak about the issue of location of the library. I was quite amazed to see that the long-range facility plan of the library has it up here on the parking lot. I don't believe that's possible. The reason is that the construction of the library is using redevelopment funds, and this was an agreement signed between the county and the RDA in 2004. And I think you'll find that tax increment funding is not permitted outside the project area. This is very simple. If you use tax increment funding, you've got to spend it in the blighted area to improve the blight. And so basically, when that contract was signed, the die was cast. The Capitola Library needs to be in either the Rispin project area, or you might get them to move it over to the mall, which is also in the project area. But there is absolutely no question that you can't spend tax increment funding outside project areas. So I suggest before you move forward on asking the citizens questions about the library, you make sure that there's no questions about where would you like to have it. That bridge has been crossed, and I would agree with Mike that it's way too early to decide about any other matters. But I do think the community is entitled to know that at the moment the library stands firmly in the Rispin site. Now, conversely, if you want to replenish the money that the RDA contributed and the subsequent money that it's about to contribute, I'm sure then that it's completely funded by city funds. You can put it any place you want it. But I don't think you can move it under the existing contract and continue to use the RDA's money. And I think you might want to get an answer to that question before you move forward. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you, Glenn, for that guidance. Anyone else from the public want to address the council on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council for deliberation and action.
I'd like to move that we table this consideration for Gene Bregman and Associates to do a public opinion poll at this time until we have more time with the joint committee that has been formed with the county officials, the library board, the library facilities subcommittee. There are a lot of different things that need to come down the pike before we launch off. I think ultimately it would be a good idea, but I'd like to make a motion that we decline this at this time.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to table this item. Now, I heard table or decline?
Well, I think the thing to do right now is to decline it, and we can bring it back up at
Bring it back
some time.
at a-
Because there's no tabling it to a date certain, perhaps, but there is no date certain, so.
Okay. So there's a motion and a second. Anyone else have comments? Jamie, I had a question. If this were tabled, is there any time sensitivity about doing the Public Works stormwater survey?
There is in that regard, but it can be accomplished through another mechanism. This wasn't the only mechanism by which that public opinion polling could be done. It can be done independently outside of a contract with Mr. Bregman. So we would be doing that anyway. I guess the only point I would make about the libraries is that this obviously isn't something that has to be done at this meeting tonight, and the deadline for construction of the library is coming. It's not next week, but it's coming in several years, and given the scale and scope of the project, I will continue to push because I do think that we're going to have to make important decisions about the library, and I think it can be valuable information to check in with the citizens, but maybe forming the library subcommittee and working with that group a little bit about some of the questions may be an appropriate path to take.
And that's the best part. I think that getting a little further down the road, when we have the library subcommittee back in action, we can have a more comprehensive list of questions to give to Gene that he can poll effectively.
Right. And maybe also during that process, we could look at the issue that Glenn raised about the RDA funds and the RDA area, and seeing what possibilities we have before we make, kind of presentations to the public that it may go anywhere that we may like.
I can assure you staff has looked into it extensively, but it's
Okay.
not a time for briefing on
Okay.
that subject.
So with that, I'm going to call the question on the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Dennis, did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
The motion passes unanimously. We have a new form of voting. If it's not a unanimous vote, we have to go through a roll call vote because every person has to be identified with their vote under those circumstances. And so that brings us to item 8C. We're kind of moving around on the agenda. That item is to consider an ordinance amending Chapter 1504 of the Capital and Municipal Code pertaining to building and fire model codes to become effective January 1, 2014. This is the second reading of an ordinance that had already been presented to us. Staff report? Yeah, hi, Rich.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. This is the second reading of the update to the municipal code to adopt the latest edition of the state building codes and to adopt the Central Fire Protection District's fire code that we heard a couple of months ago. If there's any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them. Chief Maxwell is in the audience as well.
Are there questions? Yep.
I just say that I pulled this item, and I know where the vote's going to go on this. I just would like to state why I'm going to vote against it.
Okay.
My reasoning. Okay.
Are there any members of the public that would like to address the council on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back for council deliberation and action. Is there a motion?
I want to hear Dennis's comments first.
Okay, you want to proceed?
Yeah, I would. If I
Okay,
could.
go
Thank
ahead.
Might change my mind.
Okay. For the past 80 years, in building code requirements in the city of Capitola, we haven't had a fire sprinkler code requirement. And we've actually operated quite well. I'm not saying the fire count's any lower or any higher. But if you take statistics on when you put sprinklers in, the majority of the damage to homes today from sprinkler systems is not from fire, it's actually from faulty fire systems. This is not a defined art yet. They are a faulty type of system, and they do fail. And they also require a significant amount of maintenance by the owner of the house who owns it. In most cases, people are not educated how to maintain them. And so what goes on from the valve in the street, which the homeowner has no control over, to all the way into the house, they are responsible for maintaining that whole system. And most people do not know how to do that. It's a significant addition to the cost of construction in new homes today. And we keep seeing these types of fees getting added on and added on. It's not just installation, it's the maintenance of these systems, it's the process they have to go to get them approved, it's hiring someone with a specialty in sprinkler systems, it's people that have to do the inspections on it. We're employing more and more people to do on the backs of a homeowner to maintain what we see as a single-family residence. And this is happening from all levels. It's happening in water, it's happening in sewer. All these fees add up, and we're going to come to a point real soon where people with normal means in this town won't be able to afford to build a house here. And we're really close to that now, and I see it all the time. See so many houses go through the process, and they die on the drawing board because of the fact that they can't afford to build them. This is one more thing that we're adding on there that is it's important, but it's not that important if you weigh out the safety issues that they're doing. Improvement in our roads would be more important. Making sure that fire trucks can get there or have access through alleyways or whatever it has to get there is more important than having that sprinkler system in there. These are the reasons I'm going to vote against this, because we've operated as a city without it and we've been successful, and we're adding another law to protect ourselves from ourselves. And so that's my reason.
Right. Thank you, Dennis. Any other comments from council members? Is there a motion?
Make a motion to adopt the ordinance.
I will second it.
There's a motion and a second. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Harlan?
Aye.
Councilmember Norton?
No.
Councilmember Bottorff?
Yes.
Councilmember Termini?
Aye.
Mayor Story?
Aye. The motion passes 4-1.
Thank you, Sam.
You're welcome, Dennis. Thank you for your comments. Next will bring us to item 8I, which is to consider approving a lease agreement with MRA Inc., doing business as Capitola Beach Company, and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement commencing on October 1, 2014, for a term of 5 years. Is there a staff report?
Certainly. Good evening, council members. The item before you is the approval of the lease agreement with MRA, who has been in business for over 10 years. The agreement begins on 2014, and it's for 5 years with an option to renew for an additional 5 years. It is essentially no change from the existing agreement, with the exception for a request from the business to extend into weekends from September, October, and November. Currently, they end at the weekend prior to the Art and Wine Festival, so that is a significant change. The rent is adjusted annually by the CPI. Again, it's a 5-year with an option to renew. Another significant item is I have included in this lease agreement, I have the conditions of their permit, so it's very clear as to what they're allowed to do and not allowed to do at that location. Staff is recommending the approval of this lease. They have been good tenants, and we've had quite a bit of success, and we get a lot of positive from the people that utilize those services. And that concludes my report. If you have questions, please ask.
Thank you, Lisa. Dennis.
Lisa, the city owns the property adjacent to Botanica Arms and leases it to them.
Yes, they do.
What is the lease agreement on that? How does that compare to this one?
It's similar, although I can't tell you exactly the terms and conditions because I haven't looked at that one recently, but because it's another unique sort of situation because it's attached to the restaurant. But it's a square footage lease similar to this one. It's revocable. I can't recall what the terms are.
Is that a recurring lease also, or is that just ongoing?
You know, I'm not sure. I think it's ongoing with the restaurant with the revocable terms.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to pull that to look at it.
Does the city receive revenue from that?
Yes.
On a yearly basis?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Steve.
The lease with Britannia Arms they had a 5-year option, just like this lease did, which they executed last year.
Okay.
So they have 4 more years, I believe, on their existing lease.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Any other questions on the staff report? Seeing none?
I had a couple.
Yes,
Mine are mostly clarification. I look at the on the lease, and it says that the lease is for 256 square feet. But then on the lease, it says the space is 20 by 20. And so I'm not sure, is it 256 square feet or is it 400 square feet?
You know, I want to say it's the 256. I think the 20 by 20 is the area that needs to stay clear around in front of it that identifies that you are not, they can't impede have equipment and so forth in that space, but it's the 256. That's the defined area.
Okay. And the other, in the lease, I had a copy of both the previous lease and the existing lease, and there's some language about having surf classes with an instructor. And when I looked at the city surf ordinance, the ordinance states 4 customers per instructor, and this lease has 3, and I was just wondering why there's a difference.
That is a good question. I think at the time that we approved this condition of the use permit, that was the specification, and they are held to, I think, a different standard actually than our ordinance, because that was the condition of their permit.
And in the instructions, it says that they'd be limited to no more than 3 clients per instructor with 2 classes at any time, which would mean a possibility of 6 people in the water. And when I go to the surf ordinance, it allows 8 people in the water. And then in the surf ordinance, it said there were other surf companies that were allowed to participate in this. And I'm just wondering how this all works with them working in. And a follow-up question is, it's listed at one time that there were multiple companies. Do we have any existing other businesses that have permits for surf schools?
The chief would actually have a better answer as to how many have permits. The lease agreement with MRA was prior to the ordinance coming into effect. But how many have permits, I'm not aware of how many.
I think we put a limit on the number of surf schools
There
that could
are.
have permits when we crafted the ordinance.
There was. Actually, in the ordinance, it does say that.
5, I think? Is
I think it
5?
was 3 plus Capitola Beach, but I don't even know if those 3 still actively have.
That's correct, and we actually have a list of people who are interested in additional surf schools, but by capping it on the limit that we do have, it actually makes the water a little bit more safer, because then we don't have a lot of stray boards around.
Right, that was my concern, because we have this limit of 8 people in the water, and if Capitola Beach has 6, I don't know how that rotation works. Is that just a self-regulated?
We actually work with the surf schools to monitor that and to
Okay.
ensure that it's a safe area for everybody to enjoy.
Has there been any complaints?
None that I'm aware of.
Okay. That's it. Probably for consistency, we should have those numbers coincide with the ordinance and the provision, if it's 3 to 1 or 4 to 1.
If that's the recommendation of the council, I think because they came in prior to the ordinance and they were held to a different standard, but I'll take the direction from the council.
Well, in the...
I don't know that the leasee is necessarily interested in taking more than 3.
It's a maximum.
Yeah.
It says maximum. That's
Yeah.
why. So I don't want anybody to have any. If someone else can have 4 and he can only have 3, I'm thinking that might not be fair. So it's the actual ordinance does say the language is that it was Capitola Beach Company and 3 others. And so I just think the numbers should be consistent. That's all. I just want the document to be consistent.
Okay. Any other questions from council members? Seeing none, are there members of the public that would like to address the council on this item? If you do, step up, please.
Well, I know my name's Ray Opalskis, and I've got a shop down here in the village, been down here for 10 years. I know that originally that this agreement with Capitola Beach Company or with the rentals was strictly going to be rentals, and my understanding now is that it's been changed to rentals and sales, and I'm wondering how that comes into play. I know I'm not the only shopkeeper that's concerned. We're paying high rent, and if I'm not mistaken, they're paying very, very, very low rent. And initially that agreement was supposed to be for rentals only, not for rentals and sales. And I have concern about it. I know that other shopkeepers who are not present tonight because they're out of town have concern about it, and I'm wondering just how that really happened, because it doesn't seem really fair to me.
Sure. The City Council reconsidered this item, I believe the year was 2006, I could be mistaken, where they did reconsider and they specifically listed the items that could be for sale. Maybe if you were here, it was very significant discussion, and so in the lease agreement, it's very specific of what items could be sold, and that was outlined by the City Council at that time.
Is that true in the new agreement?
It's my understanding it is, because we all, I think all of us up here, except for Ed, were part of that discussion. And the Capitola Beach Company withdrew the sale items that were in question, and then in addition to that, went ahead and rented a space.
It was amended
Yes.
from the original agreement, and then in 2000, I'm sorry, the year escapes me, the sequence, it was 2006, 2007.
2006.
Okay, where they came before the council, it was questioned, and the items that they could sell were very specific, and I list each and every one of them in here, what it is that they can sell. Sunscreen, logo T-shirts and/or hats, surf accessories consisting of only surf wear and surf leashes.
I thought it was supposed to be limited to skin products. I don't know when T-shirts and sweatshirts came into play.
It was at that particular meeting, and I'd be happy to meet with you afterwards, and I'll pull the minutes for you if you'd like to review them.
Okay, that'd be great. I'd like to.
Okay. Anyone else would like to address the council on this item?
Good evening, Mayor Story and council and staff. My name is Gail Ortiz, and I come to you tonight as a citizen of Capitola and a business person of Capitola. These kids who run this business are locals. They've proven themselves over the last couple of years, and they bring the kind of character to our village that I want to see as a merchant. Even though I'm not down in the village, I want to see Capitola as a unique, family-friendly, old-fashioned kind of place. And these kinds of, you remember when Mimi French used to ride her bike around the village selling popsicles, and I miss that. I miss that kind of thing. And I think that's where we can look to, that's where we can go, that will distinguish our village from Santa Cruz, from wherever else. We can hearken back to those old-fashioned days, and I think these guys are doing that. I think they provide an incredible service. I believe they are another set of eyes on the beach, which I'm sure our police department really wants to see. And the last point is that these two have made a significant investment in this business. And I can understand the council's reticent to give them a long-term lease to begin with. But now's the time, since they've proven themselves, to help them make that investment pay off and give them a longer lease with an extension. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to address the council? Seeing none, I'm going to bring it back to the council for action.
I had the pleasure of being on the Planning Commission many, many, many years ago when this item first came up. The very first time the Capitola Beach Company went for rentals, and I can appreciate the merchants' statements, because we did consider that carefully some years ago as well. And if I had observed racks of T-shirts and sweatshirts out there over the years, I would be a little reluctant to go forward with this, and yet that's not the case. I think that if I've ever seen, 2 bottles of sunscreen go out of that place any summer day, I'd be surprised. It is a brisk rental business, and I don't see any need not to continue this, not unlike we do Britannia Arms, the Wharf House, the Boat and Bait. It's working. I think they have adhered to the restrictions we put on them as far as sales of products. And I'm not sure why the other items are in the lease, but I've never seen any of them out there. If I wanted a T-shirt from these guys, I go to their store, which is half a block away. So I'm just in favor of approving this with the note that we have understood and heard the merchants as well as the single merchant that came. The other merchants have come to us, and we hold them to a high standard. And again, it's not only not broke, don't fix it. It works remarkably well, and let's not fix it. Let's just let it go. Those are just my feelings.
Okay. Dennis?
This business provides recreational opportunity to a lot of people who probably would never get themselves on a surfboard around the water. And so I think just the recreational opportunity and the health benefit of a business like this located there is significant. The other part of it, which Gail brought up, is that you have one more eye on that area, and where that business sits, Matt has at least one person in that booth that is looking out onto that park constantly the whole time that he is open. And that's a safety issue, because that's a lot of public going on there, and it's also not an easy place for our police force to get back into. So I highly support this. They have a financial investment in this, in that space there, and they're providing well for our community. And so I'll move for approval of extending the lease out and have city manager take this on.
Second?
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further comments? Yes, Stephanie.
We spent a lot of time discussing this in the past, and I think we all are very sympathetic with the businesses there. And if there are any deviations from this, we can bring it back here and review it. And so I think we're all open to that at any time. If we think that something there is not working well, then we're really happy to look at it again.
Okay, yes. Excellent. Ed, anything you want to chime in?
Yeah, Lisa over here.
And yes.
Is that with the change of the 4 clients as opposed to the 3 clients per surf instructor?
Yeah,
For
3 to 4.
For consistency, that's acceptable to the motion maker.
Okay.
You didn't make the motion, you seconded it, didn't you?
It's acceptable to me.
Yeah.
It's acceptable. So, I agree with it.
Okay. And I just want to say, this business provides a good customer service into the Esplanade area and to the beach. And I think that is part of what attracts people to the Capitola Village. And so I would hope that we shouldn't just look at this as a zero-sum game, and that these are the kind of enhancement that grows business for everyone. And so with that, I'm going to call the vote on the motion. Let's have a roll call vote on this one. Sue?
Councilmember Harlan.
Aye.
Councilmember Norton.
Aye.
Councilmember Bottor.
Aye.
Councilmember Termini.
Aye.
Mayor Harlan. Mayor, sorry.
That was last year.
Really?
I haven't made an impact yet.
Evidently not.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. We will now move on to item 9A is next up on the agenda, which is to consider an urgency ordinance prohibiting commercial marijuana cultivation. Can we start with a staff report, please?
Good evening, council members and mayor. Before you tonight is a consideration for an urgency ordinance to prohibit commercial marijuana cultivation and processing. A little history and background on this. In 1996, Proposition 215 passed, the Compassionate Use Act. At the state level, cultivation and processing and consumption of marijuana was legalized for qualified medical purposes. Recent court decisions have found that cities retain the regulatory authority to prohibit and/or regulate medical marijuana businesses and land uses. More recently, on December 16th, 2013, before the holidays, we received a building permit application for a remodel at 200 Kennedy Lane for the commercial marijuana cultivation. When the plans came in, they showed more lighting than typical, and we began to ask questions and realized what the new use is going to be. At this point, staff determined that this is a public nuisance per our code, and the property owner, a property owner is not permitted to use property for an illegal use or to use the property in a fashion which constitutes a public nuisance. Let's see. So a public nuisance, it's a documented land use. This type of land use has documented conflicts and public safety issues. A few of those include offensive odor, illegal sales and distribution, criminal activity, fire hazards, excessive energy consumption, and problems with mold, fungus, and pests. Within Exhibit B, there's a memorandum from the Chief of Police, Rudy Escalante, in which he voiced a shared concern for the public safety issues involved in this land use. We also believe that it's not a compatible land use within the city of Capitola. Capitola is made up of a mix of uses with residential, close to commercial and industrial, and due to the compatibility issues of this land use, we would not recommend allowing commercial cultivation. Staff has had many inquiries over the counter and within phone calls from the public regularly regarding cultivation and sales of marijuana. To provide more clarity within the code, staff has worked with the city attorney to draft an urgency ordinance to explicitly prohibit commercial marijuana cultivation and processing within the city limits. The urgency ordinance before you tonight prohibits commercial cultivation and processing of marijuana. It allows primary caregivers and qualified patients the right to cultivate medical marijuana and meet personal needs within limits. Those limits include prohibiting outdoor cultivation. The limits to indoor cultivation include residential parcels, so it could only be cultivated on residential parcels. The maximum grow area of 50 square feet. Residents are to maintain their kitchens, bathrooms, and primary bedrooms for intended uses and not be used for cultivation in those areas. And then also it cannot create a public nuisance. Because this is an urgency ordinance, it requires a 4/5 vote this evening. Otherwise, the ordinance would not pass. So this evening we'd like you to consider adopting the proposed urgency ordinance to add Chapter 9.61 of the Capitola Municipal Code to prohibit commercial marijuana cultivation and processing within the city limits and find the action exempt under CEQA. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Are there questions? Seeing none, I'll open it up to the public. Are there members of the public that would like to address the council on this item?
Good evening, Mayor Story and members of council. My name is Ron Kirkish. I reside in Gilroy, California. I'm a member of the Coalition for a Drug-Free California, International Faith-Based Coalition, and Citizens Against Legalizing Marijuana. I'm here tonight because I do live in Gilroy. I used to work at Texas Instruments here in Santa Cruz, and I grew up in San Jose and Pacific Grove. In the 50s I lived. Anyway, so I have a strong attachment to this area as a whole. One thing that gets me, or I like to speak to you about, is a year ago, this coming February, 3 children, young men and a lady, I believe, they died in single-car accidents. Sheriff Cardoza, the Santa Cruz County Sheriff, in the Santa Cruz Sentinel, said that this was getting more normal. People getting in accidents, 3 kids in 1 month dying, single-car accidents, one wrapping himself around a tree, dying. These were young kids. Then let's go a couple more months ahead. We see a lady get stabbed to death by a schizophrenic stoner. That's what I call, excuse me if I offend anybody, but a person that's a drug abuser and out of his wits stabs and kills a lady who has a business there. But the real shocker and the real thing that really concerned and brought the concern forward was when the 2 detectives, Santa Cruz, the first 2 people ever got killed in the city of Santa Cruz since it's a corporation. Killed by a man who had a history of problems. He wasn't stoned, but he had problems. He had problems in Oregon, and he was associated with drugs too. He somehow got hold of the detectives' guns and shot them with their own guns. So, then I have to remind you that even a few months preceding that, there was a riot downtown with anarchists. And these anarchists are pretty bad people. They're into drugs and stuff like that. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because Santa Cruz, part of their logo is a beacon. Beacon meaning to ocean goers, follow me to safety. But in what Santa Cruz essentially did was he created this beacon for all the people who like to abuse drugs. They built a drug culture, whether it's a subculture or not. But they built a drug culture within their city, and they're fighting it today. They're trying to kick them out of the streams. They're trying to kick them out of the things. They're trying to clean up their needles. They want them out, and they're doing things to get them out today. And more than likely, some of those people are now living in your territory. The reason I'm bringing this up is because the message that we sent the kids prior to those detectives being killed was, bring in your dope, bring in your crazy people, we love everybody. Well, they paid the price. Now it's time to clean it up.
Yeah. Ron, you should start to wrap up, okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. So anyway, now it's time to change the tune. Send a different signal to the citizens of Capitola and your neighbors. Send it to the kids. The kids around here, of course, they have the highest drug use in America. That was established by the Santa Cruz Sentinel. So I would encourage you to go ahead and not only have a moratorium, but ban it. Let's start cleaning this area up. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yeah.
Hello, my name is Manuel Vieira, and I want to correct staff. It's not just an industrial area. Kennedy Drive is at the end of it, is a residential area with over 60 families in a park, with children, with seniors. You guys keep forgetting about that. And this proposed growth area that was proposed, that the neighbors told me about, so I'm here about, is less than 300 feet from it. We already got elements from what the first mistake you guys made by letting the winery, the beers there. Why make another mistake, please? In addition to that, we had a fire in our park. And unfortunately, the person who had the fire, to make a long story short, he was on a medication, and he also was a user of marijuana. So we already had a fire. He thought things were talking to him, put people in danger. He's no longer in the park. I think he's in jail still. But the kids, the seniors, don't think about me. Think about the people that live in the park. I'm not just a landlord. I'm just their voice. I try to protect them. I try to keep places safe. The city should think about them too and not forget about them. And this ordinance, that is a proposal, I wish you guys will add a little more spunk to it. That's even testing. As a lab over there testing the cannabis to see how potent it is, that was on the Sentinel newspaper. Do some research. Get that lab out of there. It brings the element to the kids and the seniors. So I would really strongly suggest that the city council and the mayor could direct staff to, besides adopt this ordinance, please check that lab that's supposed to have been, when it was presented here, to test soil and other items, asbestos and stuff, not cannabis. That was never brought to us. But again, it's another lie that John McCoy has brought to us as a park owner and to the city council. And for your information, we are still in a civil battle due to the fact of that open roadway through my park. In case you guys want to know, it's not over with.
How's it going, by the way? You think that can be wrapped up at all in the near future?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, Councilmember Harlan, I think that is a item for discussion at another meeting on agenda.
Like I said,
While he's here.
Well, I'm just saying that that's the crown. Discuss it. But the whole matter is, it's still going on. I'm not a quitter. But please, guys, you guys made a mistake to all the residents. You owe this to them, to not let this happen over there again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, Council. My name is Nicholas Bryan. I just want to address on the opposing end of what everybody's saying here. I believe that if it's hard to say, listening to the other arguments, that we're identifying schizos or people with mental illness and identifying this with medical marijuana or with medicine and something that has been voted legal in the state of California. And I think as much as there is opposition, there is as many people who are supporting this, and I think that there should be at least some consideration, if not, in the commercial places where there are being requested for accepted locations, at least be accepted, if not in these locations, considered in other locations, because this is something that the voters of California have approved, Santa Cruz has approved, and I believe there are at least as many people for this as there are opposing this. You know, there are few people here who are speaking up on this, and I don't want to disrespect anybody who has their feelings about opposing it, because I think there are elements we do want to keep out of our city and of this town, but I also believe that there are just as many people who are business oriented and who do care about this city and who are for this and would like to see something approved for this for the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council for discussion and action. Who would like to begin? Mike or Stephanie? Yes, please.
Well, I went over there again to look at it from all the different sides, and it's just not a suitable location. It's right next to a bunch of homes, and the odors and the traffic and possible problems in the future is just not something that I think we have a good location for in Capitola. When those cell towers went in, we had a long discussion about trying to protect the residents. When they were buying the park, we had a lot of discussions about trying to help the residents, and I think this is another step forward in trying to protect that neighborhood, 2 large mobile home parks there, from a business that may have some problems, and I don't think it's appropriate there, and I can't think of another place in the city where it's appropriate, so I'm very happy to support this ordinance. As a nurse, I'm certainly supportive of medical marijuana. I have seen firsthand, personally, and friends and patients and relatives and so forth, the help that it gives people and the ease of their pain, the ease of their nausea, their ability to withstand chemotherapy and continue and eat and live. So it has its place, but I don't think that this location or the Capitola has anything to offer for a commercially grown operation.
Anyone else? Yeah, Mike.
This is a huge subject. We could stand up here and speak and pontificate about this all night. I have a strong personal bias towards legal medical marijuana. I think it's important. I think it's significant. And like Stephanie, I have seen the beneficial results of it. And this is the place where council members really test their mettle, because we're not up here to impose our personal views on the whole city of Capitola. We're here to shepherd our city. We're here to be considerate and careful. And I do not want to demonize marijuana to the point where the lab is part of this, because it shouldn't be. It's a wholly different situation. But I'm going to vote in favor of this ordinance, because I think, like Stephanie stated, it is the wrong place. We are just too small a community, and there are areas very close to us where dispensaries and medical marijuana grows can take place. So it's not like we're depriving the community of anything. It's just, we're just too small. We just do not have the resources, and we do not have the open space to let this happen effectively without affecting neighborhoods. So I will move the staff recommendation.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
There's a second by Ed. Any other further discussion? Yes, Dennis.
There probably isn't a jurisdiction in California today that isn't struggling with the same issue. And the roads west are littered with the bones of pioneers. And certainly this city is not in a position to be a pioneer in this field. And that as the evolution of this industry comes around, and maybe we feel secure with it, maybe it may happen in the future. But I think at this time we're not ready to take on anything of this magnitude. And so I support the motion to explain.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a couple quick comments.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that there's a need for medical marijuana, and it's been proven. As has already been mentioned, we have struggled up here trying to find locations for dog parks and skate parks without getting public opposition. And this is just another institution that falls into that realm. This is just too small of a town, very small industrial area. There are plenty of opportunities for a facility like this to thrive and be where it doesn't have an effect on people. And it's for that reason we're here on many levels to protect the concerns of our citizens. Like I said, dog parks, skate parks, the list goes on. We are just protecting the effect on people. We hear the neighbors make this request, and for that reason, I'm going to support the ban also.
Right. Thank you, Ed. And I would just like to add, I agree with the comments that you've heard from other council members about Capitola just being too small of a community to try to absorb and to host this kind of commercial activity, and particularly in this location next to two very large mobile home parks that have already been impacted by the construction of the building there. But I'm also moved by, because as Stephanie mentioned, I'm a supporter, as we should be, because it's the law of the Compassionate Care Act. And this ordinance in no way interferes with the Compassionate Care Act. It continues to allow individuals for their use to do private grows, even here in Capitola, under certain conditions. So this preserves their ability to do that, and the Compassionate Care Act, as the courts have ruled, do not limit the ability of local jurisdictions and cities to kind of manage and control the commercial growing of marijuana. So with that said, I'm going to call for the vote, and I'll ask Sue to do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Harlan.
Aye.
Councilmember Norton.
Aye.
Councilmember Bottorff.
Aye.
Councilmember Termini.
Aye.
Mayor Story.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously, and therefore it meets the 4/5 test for an urgency ordinance, so it will go into effect immediately. Thank you, staff. The next item is item 9B, which is to consider allocating funding to Esplanade Sidewalk Park. Good evening, Steve.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The item before you tonight is to consider allocating, originally as in the staff report, $15,000, which was put into the capital improvement program as unallocated funding at the last council meeting, to a sidewalk improvement project along the Esplanade in front of the restaurants. The city has been approached by the property and business owner of one of the restaurants who's interested in replacing the sidewalk with the village streetscape sidewalk, and he has offered to participate in a 50% sharing of the cost for that project. In looking at the project, the city staff determined that it would be a good project for the entire frontage along the restaurants along the Esplanade, and it may also provide an opportunity to widen the sidewalk and make great improvements to that area. So the city staff has gone, had a Bowman & Williams develop an engineered plan to widen the sidewalk, and we have approached other property owners along there to gauge their interest in it. At this point, we do have the original owner of Paradise Beach Grills have remained interested. As my understanding, today we got confirmation of his neighbor is interested in participating. So we are continuing to work with the two remaining property owners to see their interest. Regarding funding, so we have $15,000 in the capital improvement program that was kind of set aside for, at the time last week, for miscellaneous sidewalk projects. It's our recommendation that we allocate that $15,000 to this project. The cost of the two properties that we have committed now is about $50,000 total, which would mean our share is $25,000. For the remaining $10,000, I'm recommending that tonight we allocate $10,000 from the Stockton Avenue Esplanade intersection improvements that we are still trying to finalize the design in. We borrow the money from there. When we get to build that, if we have additional money, we'll come with recommendations at that time. That's a nearby project, and I actually think there is sufficient funding in there with the $10,000 additional. So our recommendation tonight would be to allocate the $15,000 within the capital improvement project, add additional $10,000 from the Stockton Avenue Esplanade project to this project for a total allocation of $25,000. Regarding the other two property owners, we're trying to make contact with them. One was out of town, the other we're just having difficulty getting a hold of right now. So we do think we can build it in portions. If this is approved tonight, we'll have a meeting with the contractor who's been giving us the pricing on it and talk about exactly how to phase the work if we can do that. That's my report. And if you have any questions.
Go ahead. Steve, I'm assuming that if you have to do this piecemeal, they'll do the curb and gutter in such a way that there'll be a minimum amount of demolition and loss as we step our way down the street?
Yes, we will. Okay. That'll be the first thing we figure out is how do we phase from new curb to old curb.
Like
in this.
Maybe a rolled AC?
Yeah,
just to
exactly.
make the transition.
We have to, and drainage will also be a consideration.
Yeah, a 24-inch deep curb and gutter assembly. It's just like, I just hear the jackhammers from here. Thank you.
Dennis.
Steve, there's absolutely significant logistical problems with doing this project and keeping these businesses open. Do you think, or that we can convince the property owners that along there that they're going to see a time of closure? There's going to be times when you're not going to be able to access some of those buildings. And so what do you suggest? How do we do it?
Certainly, we have been upfront with the two property owners that we've been in contact that there is going to be significant business disruption during the project. And talking with the contractor, he's developed a plan where he plans on building some plywood ramps, bridges type that would span the construction area while they're not working right in front of their doors to try and keep them open. He's committed to doing everything he can to keep the access to all the restaurants while the construction's going on, but certainly there is going to be impacts. We've talked about maybe closing off the parking during construction and moving the pedestrian traffic out into the parking area. We'll look at that too. Like I say, if this is approved tonight, we'll have a meeting with the contractor early next week and figure out how to move forward.
If I'm not mistaken, the conversation so far with the two property owners has been that they accept this in that we do it in a timely manner. In other words, we would do it during February or March. We can't go into early summer with this. And so is that, if you phase this thing, is it possible? Phasing is going to take more time overall. So is that going to be a problem in getting people back open again by March if we do it in February?
I think our commitment to the property owners we've talked to would be try to finish in front of their storefronts by the end of February, which would be starting, probably in the next 2 weeks. If we end up phasing, I mean, we're going to get to the point where we don't want to do phase 2 and the next phase until next winter. I mean, that's the reality of it. We don't want to go into spring and summer and plan on still doing this. So I agree, time's of the essence to get this done, and we're working very hard to try and get the entire project done within those time frames.
So right now we have commitment all the way from Margaritaville to
Mai Tai Beach.
Mai Tai Beach?
Yeah, past Mai Tai Beach, right there. So that you're saying that could be done one time and then take the next section later, or is it?
Yes.
I see. Okay. I have real reservations about taking money from the fund where we have a public safety issue, and we're taking it away from that for a public improvement for property owners and public. So I wish there was another place we could take that money from, because I don't want to do anything to hold up the intersection. We've been waiting a long time for it, and we put it, as council put it, as our number one priority on the CIP program.
I really think it's just a temporary, we kind of, just because of location, picked that. There might be other sources. We could take it from other capital improvement. We could take it just from generally within the capital improvement program. I don't see it withholding because we need to come forward with to the council to approve plans and specifications for that project, at which time we will have a firm estimate of that cost, and if we need additional funding, that will come with that recommendation. So I don't see that holding up that project at all.
Okay. When would you say that the timing is for that intersection?
I hope to bring plans forward to the council within the next 2 meetings, and then we can proceed from there.
We build it before summer?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Steve, I had a question about the parking meter poles. Will they come out?
Oh, thank you. If you notice, I think the last 2 days we've pulled about 90% of the parking meter poles out. And they didn't do the ones in front of the restaurant because we think they'll be taken out as part of this project. So, yes, the parking meter poles are going away and are gone everywhere except in front of the restaurants right now.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you. Is there any member of the public that would like to address the council on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. What's the pleasure of the council?
I will move this item wholeheartedly. It's, it's a great, perfect, especially hearing the next property owners going along with it. It's terrific. And Dennis, we just finished, we're working at the Union Bank remodel, and they just replaced all the sidewalks, kept the bank open, and did all the concrete work and the ramps simultaneously.
Okay.
It was touch and go, but...
Burger King is open. Have you noticed that building?
Yep.
Major remodel. I don't think the inside is open, but the drive-through is open.
Yeah, it's amazing that the concrete guys have really got this down, and I agree with you. I think they can do it if they move quickly. And again, I'll move this item. Let's make it beautiful.
There's a motion to accept staff recommendation. Is there a
I'll second that.
Okay, there's a second. With no further comment, I'm just going to call for a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously, which will bring us to item 9C, which is to consider the adoption of a green energy incentive program. And the recommended action is to adopt the green energy incentive program and direct staff to amend the fee schedule. We're eliminating fees under this proposal. Yes?
That's right.
So, good. Lead us in that. Tell us more about that, Rich.
Thank you, Mayor Story. Staff is introducing a green energy incentive program for the council's consideration this evening. The program would promote green energy systems, such as rooftop solar systems, solar hot water heaters, and electric vehicle charging stations. Some of the highlights is that we would offer over-the-counter permits to our customers that apply for building permits to introduce those systems. We would also waive all of the building permit fees associated with those types of units. And in addition, we'd create promotional and educational materials. Just a brief overview. Currently, the permit review time for rooftop solar electric vehicle charging stations or solar hot water heaters generally takes between 1 and 2 weeks, depending on how much work is currently being processed. We would change that to an over-the-counter process with an appointment, and then we would waive the current fees that range from $123 to $200. In terms of promotional and educational activities, we would develop some pamphlets to feature city, state, Pacific Gas and Electric, and other available incentives to the public. We'd also try to highlight some of the financial and environmental benefits of converting to green energy and energy-efficient upgrades. We'd also try to create a web-based cost savings calculator so that folks could go to the website, look at the type of system that they might be interested in, and calculate both the energy and cost savings that they could realize by converting to those systems. We'd also try to put the information on the city website and publicize it through the city newsletter and any opportunities we could have to collaborate with our regional partners and their promotional opportunities. One other item that we would pursue would be to explore an opportunity to do a community television type of infomercial to highlight some of the programs that we're offering. So the next steps, if the council agrees to adopt the program, would be to amend our fee schedule. We'd return next month and ask that those fees be changed to free permit applications. We'd also begin development of promotional and educational materials. As you recall, the city does have a green energy fund that is specifically designed to do educational and outreach activities, so we would tap into those monies. And then with that, with the adoption, the future adoption and implementation of our climate action plan, staff would anticipate that we would periodically update the program to add additional incentives for green energy and various energy efficiency updates in the city of Capitola. So staff's recommendation to the council is that you adopt the green energy incentive program and direct us to return to amend the city's fee schedule. That concludes my presentation, and we're available to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you, Reg. Other questions? Yes, Stephanie.
Just a comment. We also might look into doing free PSAs on the regular stations, because a lot of times, you know, they do that, and that has a really wide audience. So just a, you know, radio announcement type or television announcement type of a thing, and radio also we could do. And PSAs are free, and they're supposed to run them, and just try to get as much wide publicity as possible, because I think it's a great program.
Dennis?
Rich, you might contact Ecology Action.
Mm-hmm.
They have a number of programs that we could tie right into. They may even have some development of brochures that, you know, I don't know if the city of Santa Cruz is doing this, but they're doing something similar to what we're doing. But I think this is a great program, and I appreciate staff for taking us through the process and coming to us so quickly and efficiently, getting this in place, because I think it's a good move for the public, and it's a good public relations for the city, and it's moving us on the climate action plan. It's moving us in the right direction. Thank you.
Can we add gray water to this at some point and develop a program for that? Because that's the next step.
Yeah, we certainly could. There's probably a lot of other energy efficiency upgrades. There's a number of programs currently offered by other entities out there that we want to publicize as well. So I think as we do move forward, we're going to look comprehensively at the various opportunities we have to expand the program.
It's a good program for the Commission on the Environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just to follow up with that, Stephanie, you know, we're going to have a session with the Soquel Water District to particularly talk about water issues on a separate agenda item, and trying to coordinate with them, of course, with the severe water shortages that we're facing and their issues with their aquifer. And last Tuesday they were talking about, you know, doing rationing, and which has huge implications for us as a city. So that will be coming forth as a separate item, and then, you know, maybe we can talk about ways to, you know, save water. But any other comments or questions on this item? Is there a member of the public that would like to address the council on the Green Energy Incentive Program? Seeing none, I'll bring it back. Is there a motion?
I'll move to adopt the Green Energy Incentive Program.
Second.
There's a motion and a seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Which brings us to item D, which is to consider a contract with Animal Services Authority for shelter and adoption services. And also the recommended action is direct staff to draft a resolution amending the fiscal year 2013-14 Capitola fee schedule to incorporate the 2013-14 Animal Services Authority fee schedule. So, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor Story, Council Members. Rudy Escalante, your Chief of Police. So just to give you a quick little background, for the last 40 years we've had an animal control officer, and part of their duties has been to provide animal patrol services and enforcement efforts. We've never had our own shelter here in the city of Capitola, and so about 20 years ago we kind of changed over from an animal control officer position, and now our community service officers provide that. So if a member of the public calls our dispatcher and they're looking for a response regarding an animal control issue, our community service officers respond, and we're going to continue to do that. So what has happened is on July 30th, I believe, of this year, we received a letter from the SPCA, and what our relationship has been with them in the past is we used to be part of a JPA with the county, and due to budgetary reasons, we removed ourselves from the JPA and contracted with SPCA. And the way we've conducted our services, we've continued to have our community service officers respond if they had to take possession of an animal that was sick or injured. We would transport it to a local vet, and once the animal went through the 5-day holding period that was required, then we would, if the animal was not claimed or it didn't have a chip, then we would take it over to SPCA and for adoption services. And so we had been able to operate under that for quite some time, and I feel our community service officers do a good job because they can respond in a timely manner. So in July, we received a notice from the SPCA that they would be terminating our contract in 30 days. There are only 2 boarding options in the county, and that is the SPCA and the Animal Services Authority. Another option would be obviously to head over to another county, and that would require our officers to transport the animal to out-of-county services if we were not able to have some sort of service with the Animal Services Authority. And so when we reached out, before I did reach out, I met with the SPCA, and it was just not economically feasible for them to continue the contract. And as mentioned in the staff report, the request was to increase our contract, which we currently budgeted for $22,000, to add an additional $20,000 to that contract. So I reached out to the Animal Services Authority, and they have presented a proposed contract to their board, which was approved in December of this year, which would still stay within our current budget of $22,000 for animal services. We would still continue to provide the services to our community, meaning that our community service officers would respond. They would still take possession of a stray animal if that was the case, or if it was sick or injured. During business hours, we would take it to Animal Services Authority. They have vets on staff. They would put the animal through the regular process, evaluate the animal, treat the animal if it was sick or injured, and then have it up for adoption. They also have foster care services. They have, I think it's over 900 volunteers that work for the Animal Services Authority. And at that point, then they would, again, recoup the costs for the services through the adoption. They would still collect that, which is what we currently do. And outside of business hours, we would still have the availability to our vets that we use, Pacific Vet on 41st Avenue, when we have an emergency situation. And so what we have in front of you today is a proposed contract that we would have with the Animal Services Authority that is good for 1 year, and at which point then we would again reevaluate it at that point.
Other questions from council members? No? Right. Chief, I had a question about the SPCA. They're allowed to just turn away or reject any animals that are brought to them? That's part of their mission statement, or?
I don't know what their process is there. It wouldn't be fair for me to comment on that. But they, at the time with our contract, they were taking the animals from either the Chanticleer Veterinary Services or Pacific Care that we would bring to them. And under the proposed contract, they would adopt the animal as so, and then they would keep the proceeds from that.
Okay. The ASA, Animal Services Authority, where is their facility located?
That is located at the corner of 7th and Rodriguez, and just outside the city limits of Santa Cruz.
Uh-huh. And just also to be clear about the fee, it appears that the boarding or the general services is $15,000 base fee, but it says if there's any monies remaining in the city's veterinary appropriation of $7,000, then that would be added to the base fee. So, but if we exhaust $7,000 for veterinary services, then the fee is just $15,000?
That's correct. It won't go above the $22,000.
Okay, so the maximum under any circumstances is $22,000.
That's correct.
For both veterinary and the sheltering and fostering and those other
That's
services.
correct.
Okay, good. Well, thank you, Chief, for that report.
Any other questions?
Chief, did we lose another law enforcement servant recently?
A week and a half, or I'm sorry, about 2 weeks ago, the Santa Cruz County Sheriff's Office lost Deputy Tony Jack. He suffered a major heart attack.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Dennis, did you?
You know, in the evolution of the city, and Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong, is at one time we didn't have community service officer, we had a dog catcher.
Right.
The dog catcher didn't have enough to do. And so what we did is we gave him the position as a community service officer. So the dog catcher became the community service officer. Yeah. Now we're putting the community service officer to be the dog catcher.
Dog catcher again. We've come full circle.
We have.
We had 2 dog catchers at one time. We had a lady and a man.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The lady worked part-time, I think, and they were
wasn't-
both wonderful.
And it wasn't too many years ago, it was many times this amount of money we spent on animal control.
Right, yeah.
This has been a home run for many years.
Yeah.
And there's never been more dogs in Capitol than there is today.
And they eat better than we do.
Is there any member of the public that would like to address the council on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back. Is there action?
Move the staff recommendation.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the staff recommendation. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Which will bring us to item 9E, which is to consider an ordinance amending Chapter 2.08 and 2.16 of the Capitola Municipal Code regarding the city manager and the planning department. This is for first reading, and the recommended action is to approve the changes in the first reading. Staff report.
Good evening, Council.
Welcome back, Lisa.
Thank you. It's been a long time. Staff has been going through the municipal code and reviewing certain areas and looking for updates and throughout the policy. Recently, I brought you one the last time on the personnel. So I've gone through now 2 additional chapters. This one regarding with reference to the city manager position, and the next one is with the planning department. So I will briefly go through what the changes are, the recommended changes. Going through these, there are several conflicts that are occurring between our code and state and federal law with council policy and other conflicting code languages. And so really this is a lot of cleanup that we have going on. The areas of conflict are with regards to residence, compensation, exemption from civil service, the power of appointment of the city clerk, purchasing, and another area called departmental cooperation. So I'll briefly go through each one. And so with regards to residents, the city manager is required from our municipal code to live in the city of Capitola, but unfortunately the California Constitution doesn't allow that. So that's the first recommendation, is to remove that. With regards to compensation, the city manager approves expenses. It has to do with expenses with regards to him. The code used to have it that it would be approved by the council, when actually the city council approved admin policy that allows for the mayor to approve those expenses. So that's where we have a conflict in our code. With regards to termination or removal of the city manager, that in the code it states that he will have equal to severance of 2 months' pay. Well, each individual city manager has contracts with the city that the council negotiates, and those terms fluctuate depending on what the council desires. And so rather than have it set there in the code, leave that authority up to the council depending on the negotiations that occur. The next one is exemption from civil service. This is actually a new section. There's nowhere in the code that states that he is exempt from civil service, which truly indeed from the personnel rules, he is exempt from those civil service. He is at will of the city council. But in terms of power of appointment and removal, again, this is another conflict we have in the code. It says that he does not have the authority to appoint the city clerk, and so we'd like to remove that from the list when truly indeed he does have the authority to remove. So we'd like to just remove that position. In terms of the budget, the city manager will submit proposed annual salary plan for the city council approval. We actually don't do that. We do it through the budget, but we also do it through its reference language in the salary schedules that you approve, and the MOUs and the employee contracts. So again, that's another conflict that we're trying to clarify. Purchasing agent, the city manager's purchasing authority may not exceed $400. You actually just updated your purchasing policy not too long ago. At one point it was $5,000, $10,000, and now today it's at $25,000. So there, again, that was recently approved, and that's another conflict within the code. Departmental cooperation, this says the city clerk will cooperate with managing the city with the city manager, which I'm sure she will cooperate with the city manager. But because in an earlier recommendation is to remove her from that list of appointment, that then it doesn't necessitate her having that listed, the city clerk listed in that position. So I know I ran over that pretty quickly. If you would like to stop here before I run to the planning changes, I'm more than happy to answer.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
In hopes that the city clerk will still cooperate with the city manager, I'm not understanding the power of appointment and removal. Remove city clerk from the list. Does that mean the city manager no longer can appoint or remove the city clerk?
No, I know it sounds kind of awkward, but in the code it says the city manager does not have the authority to appoint or remove the city clerk, which indeed he does. It conflicts with another code, because at one time, if you recall, the city clerk was elected. Do you recall that? And
Correct.
so
Right.
now she's not elected, I'm sorry, the position is not elected, and it's appointed by the city manager. So we have two conflicting code sections, and I
Okay.
think the one we would like to go with is this particular one rather than have the city clerk be, elected again.
So the city clerk is in fact appointed or removed by the city manager, which will help her cooperate with the city
I
manager.
think so.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you very much.
Those sections were vestiges from when the position was elected. And now I think they both point to the city attorney as being the other position that will, in the code, cooperate with the city manager and is not appointed by the manager, but is instead appointed by the council.
That's correct.
And does it also provide that the treasurer is not under the city manager and therefore will not cooperate with the city manager?
The treasurer is listed in that
It is
that
listed
list.
currently.
It is.
So,
It
okay.
is. Okay.
Any other questions? I had a question on the residency requirement. Yeah, it's very true that the Constitution prohibits us from requiring that employees live within the city limits. But it does go on to say that we may require that they reside within a reasonable and specific distance
That's correct.
from. So if that's true, I'd like the council to maybe consider that we put some limitations on where any future, I'm sure this is going to be a moot point for hopefully several decades, but where any future city manager, or if we may live, I mean,
We do
at
make
least in
that
the
requirement
county
for other
or-
positions.
right.
Mhm.
And so maybe we could consider some sort of limitation, so we don't have one, commuting in from Gilroy.
What is it for other positions?
It's response time is typically what it refers to, response,
Okay.
whether you're a police officer or even,
Does it say how many minutes?
I think it might say how many minutes for response time with a police officer within where they live. I can't recall
I
exactly.
think that we'd stay out of trouble if we didn't specify, and we just left it to the hiring practice that we use, which is, if we talk to somebody from Santa Barbara, we're going to assume they're going to move to Santa
Well, I
Cruz
didn't-
County.
Yeah, I understand that flexibility, but the Constitution does say a reasonable and specific distance. And so, I mean, I think that if we wanted to put in something, Lauren, you can correct me.
Yeah,
if
I
I'm-
would, it does state that, and I would just say that there should be a reasonable finding in whatever requirement that you would provide.
Mhm.
With the response time for emergency services, they need to be within a reasonable distance from
Can
the
we,
city.
can we say Santa Cruz County?
That's
that-
within 35 minutes in any
Anywhere.
direction.
My thought on this is that with an individual city manager, the council will always be negotiating a specific contract. And I guess I'm trying to envision the different scenarios, and I can imagine a scenario in which maybe there's an interim appointment that the council may wish to make for somebody who lives in Marina, for example. It may be a temporary situation. I guess I certainly understand where the council is going, and I don't think it would be, if we said it's within the county or we said it's within a 30-minute response time of City Hall. I guess I'm just trying to think down the road where we could run into trouble, where we were looking for some.
But we can
But I
handle
said-
that at the
Well,
time.
listen, we would always have future councils would have the ability to waive that requirement on a temporary basis, even a permanent basis, if they felt that there were offsetting justifications for that.
And I think that language is actually in the code now today, so I do think that you could write it in such a way that it could be waived as well.
Okay.
I'd like to muddy the waters a little bit more.
Oh, please,
if you
why
don't
not?
mind. You can help me on this, City Attorney. I think the way I feel and the feedback that I get from a lot of people is I'm looking for some stronger language that says something like, city manager encouraged to become a resident of the city. I think we want to set some kind of tone that we encourage that. I would like to just not acknowledge the law. I was going to ask if we could do that, if we could just put language that said, do we have to put language, or can we just leave language that's in conflict with the law?
Well, we know we can't do that.
I'm not quite sure I understand your question.
If I wanted to say, if I wanted to leave it so it
To
read,
ignore the Constitution, that's what.
I was hoping that wasn't your question.
not succinctly, but I mean, if the language said something like, city manager is encouraged to become a resident of the city, And it couldn't obviously say unless the city council approves her, but it could say city manager is encouraged to become a resident of the city. However, a response time of 5, 10, 15 minutes may be allowed to fulfill that position.
Yeah, I think that would be okay, provided that it's not a requirement.
No, I want to use the word encouraged. I mean, I still think the tone is that, given our options, we would like to see that our city manager lives within the city. And if we take that out, then essentially we're not even addressing like we don't care. It's like it's foregone conclusion that we're not encouraging that. So I would like to, my position is that. Go ahead.
I'm going to be consistent on this one and not support that, because when we brought it up before, I think one of the things that I said was, you may get somebody that's a horse person and wants to live in Aptos or Freedom or Corralitos or Scotts Valley. There's horses in Scotts Valley. Or you may have someone that, prefers a rural house. If they have 3 or 4 kids and want to have a giant yard, you're not going to get that in Capitola. So, or fruit trees or whatever. So I understand where you're coming from, and I understand the sentiment. We haven't had that many city managers to even worry about this. But I don't care. I don't really care where they live, as long as they can get here in a reasonable amount of time and they take good care of the city.
And what would that time be?
Half hour is usually.
That
I mean, other than emergency response people, like a hospital, you have to be 20 minutes away if you're on call. But usually, with traffic these days, you can't say, because you might go out and get stuck in traffic, and you might only be 2 miles away.
I think in the hiring practices, we could certainly, when we put out a resume for someone, we could state that we would prefer that the city manager live within Capitola. You can read here that it isn't a requirement by state law. But I go back to Sam's statement, the Santa Cruz County, if you define that, that's pretty, since we're midpoint in Santa Cruz County, you can drive anywhere in Santa Cruz County in a half hour. So if you say, if they live in Santa Cruz County, I think you're pretty safe with that response time.
It eliminates the time factor
Yeah.
and what they're doing to Highway 1 at any particular time, and then whether they've developed flying cars or not. I mean, there's a lot of things to think about. We have so much time here, and we're stopping so early that I know we're dying to keep talking about this. So,
And in that spirit, I'm going to ask if there's any member of the public that would like to join into this conversation.
I would like to hear a comment from the Madam City Treasurer on this issue.
No comment.
oh, be uncooperative.
I already made a comment once about Jamie not living, and I will never live that down.
So, seeing no member of the public, I'll bring it back for the council.
We have a planning.
One more change, and it's referencing for the planning department. The current language says the community development director shall be appointed by the city council, and we're recommending that the community development director be appointed by the city manager, as is a current practice, but it is not necessarily in conflict with any other language. In addition, where it discusses director compensation, the council shall from time to time determine director's compensation. I'm recommending removing that because the terms are outlined in the employment agreement, and to be consistent with the other directors that are described in the code, this particular item is not discussed for any of the other directors, so I'm just trying to keep it consistent.
I'm seeing mild discomfort by Rich back there. I think we should talk about this at length. I'll move the staff recommendation.
Second.
Thank you.
Does that motion include
everything
and the discussion about
within the
listing within the Santa Cruz County?
Well, 2 things: that we encourage the city manager to live in the city limits, but in all cases shall be within the county of Santa Cruz.
I'll second.
I already did.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
And that's all right with the second.
Sure.
I want to the city attorney. Is that having the language encourage in our ordinance that may be in conflict with the Constitution? Is that acceptable?
I didn't know we were putting that language in there.
Yeah, Ed brought it up.
No, I think
we
that's.
asked the city
I just
attorney
wanted that was part of the motion was
right.
to include that language. So everybody's clear about the motion that we're.
Okay.
The way I interpret that language is that because it's not requiring the city manager as an employee to live within the city, that it's not in conflict with the Constitution, but I welcome a discussion about that if you feel differently.
Oh, you want to keep this going too, huh? Well, I guess the reason I bring it up is because the word encourage in an ordinance can be tantamount to a requirement in real life.
It's not a shall or a will.
So, true. Okay, I guess... I mean,
Another suggestion I would make is that you could place that in maybe the recitals to the ordinance, just to note the council's position on the subject, and that you keep the ordinance language pretty straightforward with the distance requirement. That's just a suggestion.
That's a good idea, because it gets it out of the ordinance, but it's still in the body of the language and sort of the preface to it, and it outlines the intent.
is that acceptable to the maker of the motion?
What do you think about that?
I think it might be acceptable to the maker of the motion.
Yes. Then it is acceptable to the maker of the motion.
There, it's just what box is it going to be in, or what paragraph is
Right.
it going to be in, so.
Okay, I think we have forged a compromise here. Thank you. Cindy. Yes, Lisa.
Do you want to continue? I had heard something at one point. At the current language says, unless the city council approve his or her residence outside of the city. Do you still want the ability to? You do not want that. Okay.
No, because that starts to hedge close to the Constitution.
Away from the outside of the county. It currently says outside the city. I'm wondering, do you want to say unless the city council approve his or her residency outside of the county?
I don't think there's any reason to have that in there.
Okay.
No, because we don't need to approve that.
Right. We've been pretty specific about it.
Yeah. We don't need to approve where he lives as long as he lives in the county.
Do you want the ability to waive that?
He or she.
No.
No.
Okay. Gotcha.
Not interested.
Okay.
You're looking like you're confused, and
I'm not confused. My suggestion would be...
Well, it accounts his scenario that Jamie was bringing up. What if we wanted a temporary from Seaside to fill in? And
Let the future council worry about that. Are you planning on a horse ranch in Corralitos anytime? Or
I have no plans to move out of the county, so it is not...
Boondale? No? Okay, good.
Okay, with that, I'm going to call for a voice vote to approve the staff recommendation with the changes as discussed. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Which brings us now moving back up to the consent agenda. I think we're left with item 8H, as in horse, which is to designate the mayor and vice mayor to act as liaisons to the Soquel Unified Elementary School District Board of Trustees.
And I pulled this
yes.
just because I wanted to have some flexibility. And I know it's been the mayor and the vice mayor, and it's pretty much stuck to that, but if one person can't make it, why couldn't another? I think the more good relations and working relations and talking and understanding each other and trying to resolve some of our issues, the better. And so I think we talked about this once before, but I can't remember what we decided. There's no room in here for substitution? Or say the mayor and vice mayor or other designated council person?
Well, I think
like
it
that.
would be appropriate to have alternates if one of us couldn't go.
I think the concept of an alternate would be fine and would be consistent with the school district's request. I will note that this is not intended to be an ongoing position due to the Brown Act requirements. This would be considered an ad hoc position serving for a temporary period of time to work on the relationship with the school district, but isn't an appointment in perpetuity. But I do think that we could have an alternate to the mayor and vice mayor if that was the council's desire.
But we've done it for a number of years, and I think it's been good.
It would be my hope that when we try to have a meeting, we would try to schedule so that the vice mayor and mayor could both make it.
We would attempt to do that. But Stephanie, are you volunteering?
I've been on it before, and I'd be happy to again. It usually meets at lunchtime, and so. But I know other people are available for lunchtime also, and usually it's been a pretty quick business meeting because people have to get back.
Right.
Back
I think
to work.
we've been talking about have been doing early morning meetings.
If you want to go continue doing that, that's fine. But if somebody can't make it, let somebody else know so that they can be there to visit.
Do you think there's a ray of hope out there?
Yes, I'm the eternal optimist.
Thank you.
Is there another volunteer that wants to be you?
I would be available, absolutely.
As an alternate as well? Okay. We have 2 alternates. I don't know if we need to designate one to the other. I guess we would just contact either of you and see who is available at the time. So I'll open it up to the public. Any member of the public want to address the council on this item? Hearing none, I'll bring it back. Is there an action?
Motion to approve item.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to form this ad hoc committee to work with the Soquel Unified School District with alternates. So it will be myself and Dennis with Ed and Stephanie as the alternates. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. I believe, Mike, you voted in
I did.
favor? Yes, okay. Which brings us to the end of our agenda, and we will adjourn at this time to our next regularly scheduled meeting, which will be on Thursday, January 23rd at 7 p.m. in the City Hall chambers. And yes, Stephanie.
Just an announcement for everyone to enjoy the museum show. It's not going to be around too much longer, I don't think, and it's fabulous. And there's also videos you can watch, and there's materials you can look and read, and there's also a wonderful cabinet that has maps and posters and a whole bunch of things in there, and you can open these little drawers, and they're filled with really exciting documents. So I encourage everybody to go to the museum.
Dennis?
Just closing, I'm sorry I missed the last council meeting, and probably it's the worst one for any council member to miss because they get put on committees and things that you don't...
You became the vice mayor because you were
I did. One thing that went by me also was that the list of holidays that we celebrate within the city, and year after year, for 16 years, I brought up Columbus Day as being my pet peeve. Columbus had nothing to do with California. Why can't we change it to Juan Cabrillo Day? Or
How about Americo Vespucci?
Vespucci. Or Portola. They give it some local history.
I'm just trying to stick with the Italian guy.
We can keep the holiday, but let's change the name to someone who had something to do with California. In fact, another famous explorer in this area, his name was Carlos Frontaja. He was Juan Cabrillo's right-hand man, and they named all the frontage roads after him.
His henchman.
Yeah, and he invented the theory that two parallel lines never intersect. Famous guy came through, got frontage roads named after him in the city.
I bet you won't miss that meeting this year.
How about just Explorer Day?
Explorer Day. That would be good.
Yeah.
That would be good. Okay.
I'm inching my way up to Pirate Day.
Okay. Is there a will of the council to have staff consider changing the name of this holiday?
Are we talking about changing the date or changing the...
The date. Keep the date.
I think the name.
Just change the name.
You know, unfortunately, it's an item that's listed in our MOU, but I'm sure we can bring it up. We do conduct periodic meetings with the groups.
You know, Lisa Murphy doesn't need any more work. She's already overworked. Lord knows she's up to her eyeballs in garbage.
So Portola Day doesn't fit?
Maybe next time.
Okay.
Yeah, next time
I think
we
we
do the
should save it
MOUs.
for something
Yeah.
special.
Okay. Anyone else have final comments? If not, thanks everybody for listening. Everybody at home, thanks for